Welcome to the 54th interview, Indie Creator Exchange with Ro Higashi. I met Ro. Ro is the second person I met at IC3 in the parking lot Friday, walking in at 12 with our good friend Rick Lopez. And then of course we had an amazing time at IC3, and then I ran down to Baltimore SPX and was able to see Rick and Ro and invite Ro to our Indie Creator Exchange. And here she is. Good morning, Ro. How are you?
Good morning. I am doing my best. How are you guys?
A little tired. A little tired, right?
Yeah.
Well, we thank
It's
you
Yeah,
been a
for jumping.
yeah, it's a 3 day weekend for me. I'm a school teacher, so I'm definitely going to be staying up late tonight. Um, but oh, look at the doggy. Hey, doggy. Um,
he gets jealous
Hey.
whenever I'm
Yeah.
talking to anyone, so he always asks to come up on my lap. So
Of course, that's cool.
so we always start the interview the same way. We asked you to go back to your childhood and tell us what was the first awareness that you started to have of the comic world, and what kind of things were you exposed to? Were you like 3 or were you 10? Like, when does it all start for you?
I'd say I started drawing comics before I knew what comics were at 3 years old, and then my more bigger awareness of comics probably happened around 7 or 8, or maybe around 6. Okay, come on, you go. Yeah, you're
6,
fine.
7.
Um, so, uh, man, I have a teenager and a 12-year-old in my house. So yes, I hear a lot of that.
All
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah. So when I was 3, I was not, I wouldn't say I was like nonverbal, but I definitely did not have enough language abilities and stuff.
Uh,
And so I was like really quiet a lot of the times. And I remember watching this scene on Sesame Street where these kids drop a silver dollar down the street drain, and they all like kind of get stuff from their house to try to figure out how to get the silver dollar out. And so they had a stick of gum, a string, and a stick. And so one of the kids like chewed the gum, they stuck it to the end of the string, and then they attached the string to the stick, and they kind of fished it out that way. And I remember like that was the most brilliant thing that I've ever seen, and I needed to tell everyone about it, but I just did not have the words
Huh.
to tell anyone about it. So I remember just drawing stick figures on a piece of paper,
yeah.
and it was a sequence of everything that happened, and I showed it to everybody who I could. And everyone probably didn't know what the heck I was drawing, but they patted my head anyway. They gave me polite smiles and nods, and as a little kid, like that was a big deal for me, and it was just, it was a way to communicate. And I think that kind of solidified, like, oh, okay, if I'm not able to, talk to people or communicate with people the way that I want to, I could do it this way. And then when I was about 6 or 7, um,
Yeah.
my brothers got super into Marvel and DC comics, and also Dragon Ball. And
Okay.
so we used to have a neighbor that would get, who had a relative living in Japan, and they would record Dragon Ball episodes in Japanese without subtitles, and put it on VHS and then send it to him, and then he would let us borrow it, and then we would copy it.
Whoa.
And then
It's
from
like mid
there,
80s. Is this like mid 80s?
no, this is like early 90s.
Early 90s. Okay.
Yeah, so late
Okay.
80s, early 90s.
Okay.
When because I moved to the States when I was 5, and I believe we moved to the States like 1989 or 90,
Okay.
1990. And so, um, I just was really, I don't know. To me, it was, I've always been into animations in general and comics in general. I think because in the Philippines, we my only reference of the Philippines is living in the sticks, the province, and everything. So usually when you go to the Philippines, people think of resorts or like
Yeah.
really scenic places. I've personally never been to any of those places. My only reference is living in the huts and no running water, all that jazz and stuff. And we'd go back to the Philippines and spend summers there every now and then. But comics were, if somebody on the street bought a comic, they would read it and then pass it on to their neighbor. And so it would just, anyone who had a comic, the comic would go throughout the whole street and
Yeah,
stuff.
that's how it is
So
in
I
Japan.
was really excited, to see every time I visited my grandmother's house of, which comics were there at her house at that time. Um, and then, when we moved to the States, it was just, there wasn't a lot of Filipino stores and stuff. So the closest thing that we could find to that was like the Chinese grocery stores or the Japanese ones. And at the time in Seattle, the Kinokuniya, which is a Japanese bookstore,
Yeah.
was attached to the Japanese grocery store.
Hmm.
Huh.
And I just was so addicted to that place that I would save up my lunch money. I'd skip lunch every now and then so I could buy these comics that I couldn't read. I couldn't understand them at the time. I speak Japanese now, but at that time, like, I definitely didn't. And I I just was so enamored with the fact that I could tell kind of what was going on without being able to read it. And again, it kind of connected to the whole thing of when I was 3 of just, you don't have to have this language thing, this verbal language thing to be able to convey, a story or a message. And I don't know, I've just always been addicted to that. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no,
So,
I have a lot of students that I'm a middle school teacher in the Bronx, and I have a lot ever since the pandemic. I have so many students that are just nonverbal, and they're we're still getting them now. Years later, it's almost like 5 years later now. Um,
mhm,
so it's great when you can communicate another way. Sometimes they have to write down on a piece of paper, but what happens if they're from another country, a different language, and now you can't even can't even write on. You have to draw, or else you have to like pantomime. So one way or the
yeah.
other, you have to communicate. And all right, so so now take us through if whether you've had any formal training between the time that you're a little kid that was drawing out all the time, and then you're starting to develop into um, getting older. Maybe you're middle school, high school now. Have you had any formal art training?
Um, so I think I have two older brothers, and then the one that's not the oldest but older than me, the middle kiddo. He was drawing a lot of comics because we were really into like Calvin and Hobbes at the time and things too. And I remember being 7 or 8, and I think he was about 11 or 12, and he started drawing these comics, and I just remember thinking, huh, I could probably do that too. And I remember drawing just one Dragon Ball picture. I just eyeballed it from like a Dragon Ball trading card that I had gotten from a vending machine. And I remember him being so like I showed it to him thinking that he would think it's really cool. But I remember him being so pissed off seeing it that I think he stopped drawing comics altogether.
Oh.
And and I don't have
Wow.
that piece of art anymore, of course. And then in junior high and high school, of course, I was in art classes. I originally I think I was in AP art in high school, and of course, that teacher did not want me to use draw comics whatsoever, and really discouraged doing stuff like in an Asian style. So I learned a lot of other things. And then in university, I got into the art program for the University of Western Washington University. And at the time, that same brother that quit the comics was doing graphic design at UW, and he didn't get into the program because I think it's just like 300 applicants at the time. They were only giving like the degree to 13 people. I don't understand why
Wow.
that is,
It's
but
weird.
I think it really spooked my parents because then he had to take another um, year to kind of try to get into that 13-person slot, I think.
Yeah.
um, and so they told me that I couldn't do art anymore, that I had to pick something else. And at first I was really upset about it. But at the same time, when I mapped out, which is, I guess, common for a lot of art schools when you go to like a 4 year university that's not, art focused, is that it was kind of impossible for me to graduate within the 4 years. And, but if I had changed my major, then I could do it, down to 4 years. And I think I took 2 summers to, you know, end up graduating at the end of 4 years. Um, but yes, they made me drop out of the art program, and I ended up studying linguistics. And my parents were like, "What the hell is linguistics?" And I said, "Oh, it's the science of language." They only heard the science part, so they were like, "Cool beans." But that got me a job in Japan teaching English. So about a year
Nice.
before I graduated, I already got hired, and so everything was being set up, as I was spending my last year in university. And then I spent 3 years in Japan. I lived on a street where nobody spoke English.
Where in
Um,
Japan?
in Nagoya, in
Nagoya.
downtown Nagoya, like in the heart of the Yakuza district, which was very
Yeah.
interesting because for a person living there and not
Mm,
kind of related to the businesses being
mm,
run there, it was the
mm.
safest place you could ever live because
Yeah.
nobody would ever mess with those businesses or anything.
Yeah.
Um, and often you would see like huge meetings of Yakuza, like higher ups and stuff, and you just kind of made sure that if there was like a car brigade, you just kind of stop and let them go, not give eye contact.
Yeah.
um, but I ended up learning Japanese pretty fast, and the last year that I was there, I ended up taking night classes for manga school there.
Ah,
And at
cool.
that time, when I was doing that, it was my understanding that I was probably going to spend the rest of my life over there in Japan. I was pretty serious about it. At that time, I didn't really fathom, oh, I could do these Asian style comics back in America and to have them published. I think, at the time it was just kind of Tokyo Pop or Viz, same thing, like doing it. But anything outside of that, it was, kind of seen as a little bit more difficult. And that process seemed overwhelming to me. But if you do manga school, it's like a 2 year associate's degree, and you graduate from that. Um, they 95% of their graduates go directly into I guess, what is it called, like assistant, like a manga assistant role.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
um, and so you have a job for sure, graduating. And so that was the process that I thought I was going to go to. But after we got married and then I got pregnant, my husband, with us both being teachers in Japan, we were just kind of like, maybe we don't want to raise kids, multicultural kids, in this really, monocultural place. And it ended up being the best decision for them. But oh man, I was super devastated
Yeah.
because I just had worked, my whole life wanting to live and go to the school and everything. So it was just, I was sad. And then I came back, and then, I did the child rearing thing for a bit. And so that all the art stuff was put on hold. And then when I had my second kiddo, um, she was a lot more calmer than the first kiddo. She was a lot more introverted. So she didn't want me interacting with her 24/7. She just kind of wanted me near her. So
Yeah.
that gave me some extra time to start working on my comic again, which was the comic that was originally, I had wanted to set in Japan. And then after like 4 or 5 drafts, I put them on the internet, and everybody ripped them apart. Because
Uh,
at the time, the only place to, post your comics were kind of in these forums where if there was something that was Asian comic influenced, it was just kind of a, I guess, what do you call it? Like a mix of both
yeah.
styles. But
Yeah.
mine was the only one
They
that
used to
was,
call it a. They used to call it a Maramanga.
yeah, yeah,
A
Maribel. Like,
Maramanga.
so
Yeah,
it
like
was,
a
a lot of that kind of
ninja high
feel.
school, like Ben Dunn Ninja High School. That was.
Yeah, but if
That
you
was
look at my stuff, like, you wouldn't think, right,
right. Right.
Not
What year?
lately.
What year is this when you start posting the story?
Oh gosh, it might have been anywhere from like 2008
Yeah. Okay.
to 2013 or 2015. And what would happen is when it gets ripped apart, I would just go, you know what, then I'll try again. And then I'd keep going
Damn. Yeah.
and I'd restart it and everything. I probably restarted Half of the Crown like 8 times. This is the eighth reiteration to it. And
Oh
before
man.
I used to do it all only in black and white, and I was doing it all with traditional tools only.
Wow.
And I remember one time, I went to the bathroom and I came back and my toddler was sucking the ink out of one of my pens. And after that, I was like, that's it. Never, no more traditional.
Uh,
Yeah. Eventually, I went back to, getting used to traditional tools again. But I think in around 2017 and 2018, I started to develop this version. And that's when I, kind of had a talk with myself because we weren't sure if we were going to stay in America. But I think at that time it was pretty obvious we were going to stay there. So then I had to rethink, like, well, I can't make this comic for a Japanese audience anymore. So why are all the characters Japanese or Japanese speaking? What how am I going to do this? And so I ended up, and I always felt uncomfortable with the main character for sure. Like I didn't know what she would look like, so she would always look different. All the other characters pretty much would look similar, even though they would go through character design changes. But the main character Penny went through a lot of changes until this eighth version, which ended up feeling the most true.
Mm,
It ended up feeling like, okay, this is it. This is what I've been missing.
mm,
It's kind of one of those things where you just feel like it's not really your choice, but that's the way that it needs to be. And that's kind of how I felt about all of them. And so finally, um, I think the reason why I wasn't incorporating originally like a lot of my own cultural stuff is because I think in the early 2000s and 2010s, there were a lot of people that were discouraging kind of self-inserting in any way for stories or comics in general. And but I also think that was just people being gatekeeping, and
yeah.
I was probably too naive to realize that was going on.
Mm,
But I started basing the personalities of each character off of people I knew in real life. A lot of my friends, I got their blessing, and they noticed before I even told them that that's what I was doing. Um, and I grew up with a lot of Filipino folklore. A lot of kids grow up watching, American movies, and I grew up watching Filipino horror movies. And that's kind of because that's all my parents had. And I what really freaked me out as a kid ended up being kind of a fun thing for me when I was older. And so that's when I started to incorporate, that kind of thing. And it's too, I think with the release of Trece on Netflix, because that was originally a comic, I think that kind of made the idea of Filipino folklore a little bit more palatable to Americans. Because I know Filipinos, especially Filipino Americans, are always really nervous about introducing like the cryptids to the American public because they're always looking at things through like a Catholic lens, and I think they're
yeah.
worried that, oh, if we you show that this is part of our culture, we're gonna look demonic, and which I think is silly because we have Halloween all the time. People dress up like vampires, and banshees and whatever what have you, and that's not Americans are multidimensional, and we
Yep.
are capable of being like, no, this is just folklore. This is just make believe and everything. So I ended up being more comfortable including those kind of things. So
so where did the first germ for the idea come from? And also, is this your first published work?
um yes and no. So
Mhm.
I've been published a lot for illustrations, and then I did have one comic published in like a Japanese magazine in Japan for foreigners. And then I would have some stuff every now and then, like on the internet, like on other platforms. But I didn't really do the comics until this comic until now. Like I've always self-published the comics that I've been working on from 2008, like online in forums or I think it's called Tapastic now or Tapis, but back then it was
Yeah.
called Manga Magazine,
Hmm.
and I would post it on there. Um, and then the webtoon platform came around, and this new one too that I haven't posted on yet, but I kind of want to talk about it. It's called Voice Me,
Uh huh.
and I've actually found a lot of manga creators that I would love to publish through CLP
Wow.
on Voice Me. When I say a lot, like two, we have like four new other manga creators for the CL manga department, but two of them came from Voice Me, and so they keep talking about it. And I originally thought it was kind of this webcomic platform that was popular overseas and was originated from overseas too, just like Webtoon, but apparently it's not. It's very used. I mean, it's widely utilized, I think, in Asian countries, but I don't think a lot of Americans have heard of it yet. Yet the company is based in New York. So it is an
Oh.
American company, but it's Voice Me, VOYCE, and then .me. Um, but I've noticed too, their payments are actually much better than webtoons and stuff. So kind of want to do a little bit more digging into that to see what their contracts are like, because I know that a lot of people have been complaining that the webtoon contracts, if you're an original with them, are a little predatory, um, which is why I never wanted to become like a webtoon original. Um, but I really appreciate, like, Cosmic Lions contracts and everything. I think it gives so much rights. It retains a lot of the artist rights for their IP, and since it started as a web comic, I'm still allowed to continue posting on the web and everything. But yeah.
Right. Yeah. So yeah. That's interesting. Usually we'll talk like more towards the end about the biz, but
Yeah. Oh,
what
sorry,
was
my bad.
No,
it's
that's all
okay.
right. It's all right. No,
It's
no.
okay. Natural flow of conversation. What was the inspiration for the half of the crown? The idea.
So Half of the Crown originally started because I think I came up with the first version when I was like in high school, and I had a very, at the risk of dishonoring my family, I had a very rough upbringing, and comics were very much my parent. They taught me right from wrong, what the importance of friendship and connections. They also taught me, like a lot of people go through, other people go through hardships as well, and they through the value of like trying to come out of that. And so the first reiteration of Half of the Crown, back when it was called Tonic,
Yeah.
was kind of similar, where the kids were just kind of in this closed environment, and that there was this world outside of their environment, and so they were trying really hard to get out of there, but the adults in their situation were just kind of stopping them from doing so. And then eventually the story would lead to, then they get out there and they're kind of left to their own devices. And as a child, I really kind of fantasized about that, like the time that I'd get out, the time that I'd like kind of be my own person. And I think that concept still is there in this version of Half of the Crown, because I do want it to be kind of a love letter to kids who are going through or trying to navigate, a life without the guidance of a trusted adult. Um, but of course, like a lot of things changed, where as a kid you just put this on there because you're like, yeah, that's cool, people are going to think that's cool, I'm going to put that in, right? And now it's more of intentional, and I'm putting this part in because later, this and that, or I'm putting this art part in because it's important, which I think is, I'm a lot more comfortable with. So
So you would say maybe that it's a coming of age story, or it's about independence and adolescence. those kind of themes?
Um, Not so much about independence because I think although it's great, it's a good thought of having like a child be independent. I as a child out that's all I wanted to be. Um I now know that that's supposed to come in time and not supposed to come sooner than it's supposed to.
Hmm.
So it's more of just kind of if there is no adult that you can trust, that it's okay to kind of trust each other for that moment, and kind of have each other and kind of learn how to have each other. I do have a character that is extremely parentified, and so um, I want to touch on how, like, although that's great and admirable, how that can also be bad for a kid. So
Okay, and usually there's a protagonist antagonist set up. What's the conflict if somebody was just picking this up for the first time? What's the story?
So yeah, it's basically a bunch of kids that fight against demons and stuff,
Okay.
and they're kind of brought into this ancient war that kind of has been going on for a really long time. So the one adult in there, he's kind of like an exorcist, and how it works is there's like this there is this organization called the Lighthouse Keepers. And so what that is that you have religious organizations doing like exorcisms and stuff, but what happens is that the repeated exposure to these demons end up like corrupting the clergy, or the priests or whatever you call them. And instead they just kind of teach their techniques to another population that are kind of more mentally or spiritually, um, I guess, fortified to deal with that, or they're not, and then they get corrupted. But at least it's not the clergy. You know what I mean? And so and then I think this one adult basically found a couple of kids that were capable of having some spiritual, being gifted like these spiritual powers, and we call them light powers. So radiance is what it's called.
Uh huh.
And every kid interprets their radiance in a different way. So they all have different weapons, and different abilities and stuff. And so basically, what it is that like the demons are trying to kind of reach this divine power. But the only way they can do that is to kind of move up in planes. So to move up in like the human plane, they would have to take over a human's body by trading body parts of that person one by one. And before it gets to that stage, and then also like the demons that are just kind of going around trying to do that, these kids are basically there to kind of help with that battle. So that's the
Right.
origin, that's the initial conflict, and then it kind of turns into something a little bit more. So
So it's the X-Men meets Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
yeah, sure.
It
I
was
had
Maybe not as dramatic as X-Men can be. I feel like
the
X-Men
drum.
is so like TV novella, and maybe
Yeah,
mine's not
soap
at that
opera.
level, but
Soap opera.
yeah, yeah.
Well, I got into comic books through the black and white indies, mid early
Mm.
'80s, and I was a ninja mark. So it wasn't. It was just so happening to stumble into a comic book shop with a bunch of friends that were really into them, and becoming enamored with ninja as a title in it. I got into Ninja High School, Ben
Yeah,
Dunn's Ninja High School,
yeah.
and always thought that was so similar for me, definitely a bizarre way to be comforted getting through the awkward years of school. Getting through junior high school and then especially high school. So you have this comic that's all these people are dealing with high school issues. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, that same kind of thing. But the having a sense of adventure and excitement and friendship. That's how I kind of felt immediately when I got, because I as soon as I got I got volume 1 and 2 from you from SPX, and I mailed one to Jake. So I've been sitting with number 2. That was the first thing. But when you mentioned the kind of having powers and then coming to deal with them, that always seems to be something that falls down into X-Men trope, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. The reason why that I have it, I mean, lore wise, the reason why it's kids. Oh gosh, is that a spoiler?
It's okay.
It might be a spoiler. I think it's because when you're an adult, you know, physically, mentally, you have kind of done all of your development. But if you're still an adolescent that is an older adolescent, you have hopefully enough sense to make good decisions. And then at the same time, because you're still developing as a person, um, the idea is that the radiance would kind of develop with you much faster than it would if it was an adult. In the same way that like a kid, it has a more natural language acquisition in comparison to an adult. So
I noticed some themes. Excuse me. I noticed some themes. My that are recurrent. Not just between like the idea of being mutants or being like otherized. That I think that's
Mm,
what Kurt is getting into with like the X-Men and like identity. It's kind of like a metaphor, in the real world for like race or gender or all these different categories we put people into. But
yeah.
my youngest daughter, she comes home one day this summer and she's like, "Oh, we're all gonna sit down and watch K-pop Demon Hunters," and we're and Kurt probably doesn't know like too much about this, but I'm watching it. I mean, it's really like the latest thing with the middle school kids and maybe even the high school kids, young adults. And how did you feel when you saw that they're coming out with some of these similar themes to yours, but they're like the biggest thing now?
Well, I didn't, because I grew up super Asian. It didn't occur to me that because yes, K-pop Demon Hunter is like huge now, but things like that would have been huge to me all the time, and maybe I'm a little too
yeah.
introverted that like I
Insider.
kind of forget
Insider.
that.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay, yeah, that other people did it. But yeah, I was at a book fair. It was my first book fair last weekend, um, and that meeting in Houston, and someone actually brought it up to me, saying that like you should be taking advantage of all this K-pop Demon Hunter stuff, and I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, not trying to be racist or anything, but you're Asian, and people like you're gonna look to that, like this is what they're gonna see. They're gonna see you, and they're gonna think K-pop Demon Hunter, and I was just like, oh, and I didn't think of that. And so what's
Yeah.
funny is that I just looked at him. I'm like, thanks for being racist, and everyone started laughing.
Wow. Nice. Nice.
But I guess that was the only thought that I had for K-pop Demon Hunters, was like, oh, I guess I should put my stuff out there a little bit more. Take advantage of this moment.
Right.
But
I mean,
I haven't.
I think what you're saying is that these themes have been a lot more popular. It's just the Western audiences are
Yeah.
probably seeing them more now, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah. I
Because
I
mean,
everybody's catching up to you, Ro.
oh
you're there first.
Everybody's there. No, I know. I mean, it's there is something about being it. I go through it with Sword and Sorcery. I put off Game of Thrones for the longest time because it was too popular.
oh
So
yeah.
until a really good friend of mine at that time um, could explain to me why I should, as a sword and sorcery buff, Conan centric, would want to get into it. And there was an amazing connection. And I even started doing Game of Thrones fan art and everything like that. But the tail of the end of this tale is very quick, because when they screwed up the ending of that series, everybody, including myself, abandons it.
Oh
So,
wow.
you know what I mean? Like, so
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting and very tough having something similar in interest and obviously even work related to hitch your trailer to a bigger vehicle doesn't, you might catch some traction, but if you caught enough traction for yourself, it's almost like recognize disconnecting from it, then being like, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, like now let's all go back to my world and my characters, and go and building from there. um you know
Yeah, I mean, it's also like just kind of like it's only a matter of time before Hollywood is seizing on these popular things that are still a little bit more on the ground, and they see, that they can take advantage and, capitalize. And the people that were in the trenches doing it, from day one are just like, oh well, there goes the neighborhood, but on the other hand, a lot more people are exposed to it now. I mean, that were there any other? Let me ask this: were there any like seminal works that you really like treasure, as far as like they set you off on a path? Like what were some of your most
Mm.
inspiring creators or works?
So I did mention Dragon Ball, um, and there is this
Right.
other artist. He only does really. It's funny because talking about all these cultures introducing each other, he is a self-proclaimed biggest Batman fan ever. Um,
Okay.
his name is Mazakazu Katsura, and most of his works are kind of smutty. But 10-year-old me didn't care. It was just like, oh, at least he drew the underwear really cool. How did you do that, Um, and he had these two really old series in the early 90s and late 80s. I think one was called Eyes, and then the other one was called Video Girl Eye. And I just really, I love his art so much. But I think too, as a kid, I was super, I didn't have a lot of self confidence. And so I remember looking at these pages and I remember thinking like, oh, that's too good, but I have to close it because it was just a reminder of
mm,
like I could never reach that greatness, you know?
yeah, yep.
Yeah.
Could never draw pennies like that in my entire life. But in Dragon Ball was kind of the same deal, and I still feel that way when I look at Dragon Ball things. It's just kind of this thing that I might not be able to reach in my lifetime. And I think as I get older, I just keep realizing, like, well, maybe I'm not supposed to reach that. Maybe I'm supposed to reach where I'm supposed to go. And although, like, I think it's important to always improve and change and evolve, as you can see, since you saw both Volume 1 and Volume 2, there's already like a huge, style
Well,
shift. And
the interview you did with Matt and Jamie for IC3, right
Mhm.
before at the beginning of this year, I watched
Yeah.
that recently again, and
Oh, thank you.
that was but that was a big chunk of Jamie's kind of approach to the interview, and he did it so tactfully because
Yes.
it was trying to sort out for allow you to sort out publicly the chances you take, Ro. And that I find to be, I don't find a lot of people doing that publicly, other than like myself, and then the people that I've been kind of coming in close contact with through buying their books and following them a little bit more tighter. But
Mhm.
can I make a statement and then you kind of like
Sure.
unpack it? Like
Sure.
you're not chasing IP development. You're chasing your own personal development as a person.
Yeah. Yeah. It's scary.
It's not
Yeah.
a
But
negative. It's not a negative or even
yeah.
a positive. It feels way more authentic nowadays to hear somebody really um, being mindful of the constant growth that's expected in being creative, especially nowadays.
Yeah. I think that's also the beauty of indie comics. Like we don't really
Yes.
have somebody
Yes.
over our shoulder like pointing at us, telling us what to do
Yeah.
and what kind of image that we need to achieve. Like we kind of it really does allow more freedom, I think, for the creator
Yeah.
to just kind of do what feels right. And I that's one of the reasons why like I never wanted to go through the literary agent route. And I'm not knocking on, and I'm not
Yeah,
trying to like
yeah,
stop
yeah.
anyone from being my literary agent, you know what I mean?
But
but
please understand me. Please
yeah,
respect and
but
understand me.
but at the same time, it's always been this worry that like, oh, what if I get a literary agent? Because at least in Japan, the editors would have a lot of power over how your story is gonna go, how your characters are gonna look. They're almost like co-writers, if not
Yeah,
like the main writer a lot of the times.
yeah,
And I just didn't know if a literary agent in the United States was kind of similar. And I've heard of it being in a similar case where a lot of them don't want finished works. They want to develop the work with you. And
yeah,
that part worries me a little bit because I just worry that I'll be too people pleasy and I'll go with what they think is safe. And
mm,
going with what's safe doesn't, especially nowadays, like it doesn't seem what's right in this
yeah.
moment.
I
Yeah.
agree. I agree.
Yeah, that's always the balance of being an artist is commercialism and pop, doing what's popular, what you think the average person wants, lowest common denominator, making compromises. Um, but there's also the matter of just finding your ideal audience, right? And you can if you find them, you can just exist with whether it's within a niche or whether they're just a follower and they become your fan base, and they kind of give you the freedom, like if like Kurt always says, if you have like 150 like hardcore followers, they'll always buy your printed copies and make back your printing costs and everything, and then you can just don't have to worry about sales. You can just create,
Yeah.
you know
The organic followers are pretty important. I'm
right.
noticing too, there's a lot of people who buy their followers.
Yeah, that's been going on for
and
years.
I understand, no, not really, but like I can make sense of where they're coming from for that, but to me that doesn't feel right for me. So I don't think I could do that. So that's
Not sustainable either.
well, yeah, and it just doesn't. What's the point of having those followers if no one's looking at it? So you'll see
Yeah,
accounts with like 25,000 followers, but then every post that they have is maybe like 11 reactions, and it's like,
yeah.
oh,
Doesn't
what?
make sense.
Yeah,
Right.
Well,
No, not at all.
you had made a comment. You had made a comment in the IC3 interview that as big as your following was, you then once you went to print, you started getting reactions where like I want to say half your followers. I'm paraphrasing, but you found a reaction in kind of like people kind of waiting for you to go to print, right?
yeah,
In a
yeah.
weird way. In a weird way.
That was really shocking because before Eli approached me about putting it in print, I was anti-print. I
Wow.
loved buying physical comics. You can see a shit ton behind me and everything. Um, so I wasn't anti physical comics. I just, for whatever reason, thought like, oh, but it's accessible online. Why would I make it like less accessible putting it in print? And why would they buy the print if it's already online? And I ended up being super wrong. There's still a lot of people that just don't, for whatever reason, like the online format, and I don't blame them. And they just feel comfortable with having, I guess, a more intimate experience with like flipping the page and stuff. So as opposed to just like scrolling up.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder about like the disposability factor. Like when you buy a comic, to me, it's one of the reasons why records are still around, even though like digital music is so much more convenient. It's because you own a piece of stock in the company, right? It's like, yeah, this record, I'm buying it for $20, but maybe it'll be worth 50 or more, and
Yeah.
it's all, and so there's something to be said about something physical, something tangible. You always have the condition, right? Oh, this is just a
Yeah.
reader's copy; it's not worth anything. Or this is like in mint condition; it's worth a lot. So you have all that, and it is like a connection. It's like a physical connection to you're investing in the art.
Yeah. And admittedly, that part was probably really scary for me. The thought of somebody like flipping the pages with my art on there. I mean, I'm gonna be honest, it still always freaks me out. But I think I've more or less nowadays accepted that it's just gonna freak me out, and that's just something that I will live with. It's kind of the necessary thing that needs to happen if I want to, keep getting it out there. Um,
The good kind of butterflies.
yeah. So, uh, I've done a really, I think I've done a pretty good job this year of just kind of going out there, and kind of connecting with people organically. Um, but next year I'm gonna, whittle it down to maybe just 4 events
How many
a
did you do
year.
this year?
How did I do this year?
No, how many events did you do this year?
Oh, so I've done 17 so far, and then I
Gee.
have one, two, three. I have four left.
Wow.
So three or four left.
Wow.
Four. No, I'm sorry, 3 left. I just have one in January, so my mind is counting
Okay.
that one.
All right.
But it's
It's a busy
Is
year.
it worth
I know
it? Is it worth it in the promotion department?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
hands down,
Answer
the
that question.
advertising part is definitely there. With every event that I've done this year, I've noticed that there is increasingly more people that come to the event that are like, "Oh, I'm here specifically for you," and that
Yeah.
still freaks me out. But at the same time, it's
Uh,
like, "Whoa, why?
yeah.
Why?"
Right. Are you okay? No,
Yeah,
it's
and
good.
so at the book fair too, I'm gonna be honest, that book fair was a bust. Like there was hardly anybody that came by, and I think that speaks to it's not really the organizer's fault or whatever. I think it's just the economy is not doing so well right now. And there was also like this festival that was going on around the same time, um, and there was 2 people that came, one of them from out of town, that were just like, yeah, I saw that you were going to be here, and so I just had to come and get your stuff. And I was like, what the fuck, who are you?
That's
So,
wild.
so that and that's new this year. Last year that was not a thing, but this year it seems to be at, not like on a huge scale where I have lines or anything,
Not
but
yet.
it means a lot. It still blows me away that that even happens. And part of me is like, oh, well, how'd you find me? And then they tell me, oh, I saw that you posted online, and I'm like, shit, now I gotta post more online because I. So I'm gonna
Right.
be honest. Like, it seems like I have a great time posting online. Most of the time I don't. Most of the time I'm just like, and I
Yeah.
used to really love being on the internet and talking with people, but as my kids get older, I think just for privacy reasons, like I've just kind of shied away from that
Mm.
a little bit more. But next year, because I'm making a vow to myself that I'm only going to do 4 events, I'm going to try to make those 4 events count. And I feel like the only way to do that is to really take the online presence a little bit more seriously.
Mm.
So,
What for? What for next year?
so I haven't decided yet. I've
Oh, okay.
because I've
Okay.
applied to a lot. So the ones that I've applied to that I haven't heard back from yet is Mocha Fest. I've never been to that
Uh-huh.
one. And then ECCC and C2E2. I've never been to C2E2. I've done ECCC, having lived in Seattle in the past. I've done that a couple of times. Um, but for sure, I'd love to go back to Heroes if they'll have me. Um, and then I was gonna pick like one anime convention. Again, I don't want to like say it has to be this one because I don't want to say it
Sure.
until I get
Sure.
accepted. But
Understand.
if I only get into ECCC or I only get into C2E2, then I'll do that. If I get into both, I'm gonna have to choose between those two because those two are so close together that
Mm.
I don't think I can do that. But I'd love to try C2E2. I've never been to Chicago, and I've heard good things about, how it is for the comics community, even though it is a read pop thing. It's more, a lot of read pop events tend to be more
Pop
pop
culture.
culture, right?
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
pop culture convention. However, New York Comic Con, that was really good this time, and for comic artists. So maybe things are changing for the better, and maybe I should give Read Pop stuff more a chance again.
So you just wrapped up New York Comic Con?
No, I felt super FOMO for not being there. I was at a book fair,
Oh,
I think, at the same time, um, but I also never applied to it and stuff.
yeah,
New York really scares me. I think I did one event in New York in the same venue that they were having New York Comic Con,
yeah,
and just even getting to that venue from the
Yeah.
hotel was a
Oh
lot
yeah.
for me.
Oh yeah.
Um, the subway there really freaks me out. I have no issues taking the subway in Seattle, which is also pretty dangerous, and then not dangerous, but in Japan, I had no issues with that. But just taking it in New York was pretty scary.
yeah.
um, uh, but I I did feel so much like FOMO that I'd love to apply for it for next year. I just have to make sure that I need to go there with a crew. I usually go solo to a lot of these events, but I'm really getting a lot of flack from my peers being like, why are you doing these alone? You need to have at
Yeah.
least one person to like make a food run for you or something. Because you guys know how it is, like just kind of
Yeah,
Yeah.
you
times
watch.
that it's really, really busy, and then times where you're
Yep.
just kind of sitting and your soul goes into outer space.
Yep. Yep.
And that is even the lulls take a toll, physically, mentally, and all of that. But I used to try to ask for help, but I find too that whenever I do have help, they're very overwhelmed, like there's nothing I can do
Yeah.
to make it easier for them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Especially
And
if
so
you're not from the scene, like
yeah,
that.
and so
It's
then
tough.
I feel bad kind of putting them
Yeah.
in that, because everyone that I know that is familiar with the scene are their own creators, and they're there too selling their own stuff, so I can't ask them to help me. And then everybody else that I know that isn't in the scene, they don't really know much about it, and so I don't really have like. And I also, I'm not going to take advantage of a fan and ask them to. When I say take advantage, I'm still going to pay for their time
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Yeah.
I just mean what that does to them mentally.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
seen that what it does
How
to people
how
that
was
I love
SPX
stuff.
for you?
SPX was good. I'm going to be honest. Numbers wise, I probably broke even. It was expensive for me to be there
Yeah.
because I had to fly in, and
Mm.
then I also had to pay for the hotel. Um, but otherwise, I broke even, and I wasn't expecting to break even actually.
Mm.
I was a little disappointed that the for the first time Library of Congress didn't come around to register our books, but I had a great bonding experience with my publisher and that crew, and then at the same time, I learned a lot. I feel like out of all the conventions that I had this year, SPX was like one of the biggest teaching moments. I also liked to, um, how there were definitely people that kind of had their clicks, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there was people like you guys who were just kind of really there to connect with people on a more organic level, and I hadn't had that at a con in a while, so that was really nice, to the point where I'd love to do SPX again, and then of course expecting and aiming to just break even again. But also too, it was nice to just for the attendees as well. I've had a lot of attendees tell me, wow, you're really great at connecting with people, and I'm like, oh.
Uh,
I am.
Thank you.
Yeah.
are
So
you when you're tabling? Are you doing commissions, or are you just working on your progress?
at SPX I wasn't. At Heroes I was. I think it just depends on how much I'm drowning in commissions. Um, at SPX I still have a queue of commissions. I have like two more commissions to do, and I'm just
Mm.
not. No, one is traditional and one is digital and stuff. And I need to complete those, and I've started them. But I think because I'm getting a little burnt out, like I don't want to
Mm.
work on these commissions while I'm burnt out because it's
Mm.
gonna show.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, so I'm just kind of taking my time with them, and I'm keeping all of the people that are waiting for the commissions updated, but they've been really, I think, yeah, they've both been very patient. They've waited like 2 months and stuff. Um, Gosh,
Here's
I
another
think at the
question.
anime convention that I did on-site commissions. Usually, if it's a really large convention like Heroes, I will do on-site commissions, and I'll try to get them as done as quickly as possible. And if I do it like right then and there, I think more people are um, a little bit more understanding that it's not going to come out super duper neat.
Right.
But everyone seemed happy with their commissions from LA Comic Con. But that's also one of the things I'm trying to learn is that like they're not wanting the super neat. They actually want the grit and the
The
Yeah,
real you.
yeah.
The real you.
spontaneity.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Spontaneity.
IC3 was pretty interesting because they were letting people order the commissions beforehand so that you could just deliver it when you get there, right?
Yes.
That gives you weeks or months, to work on them ahead
And I
of
need
time.
to do that better. And I think if I only do 4 events, I'll be able to do that better.
Right. Right.
At the risk of sounding like I'm my, meat is too buttery. um, I every time I open commissions, a floodgate happens, and then I have to close it in like 15 hours because
Right.
otherwise I get over 20 and I just don't want to do that. So I because when I work on these commissions, I don't just sit there and it's do it um and then give it to them. Like it's not just this, I guess, robotic thing that happens with me, unfortunately. If I'm giving something to somebody, I want to at least put some intention in it. And if I'm not in the right headspace for attention, then or intention, I don't want to do that because I don't want to pass on bad juju to people. You know what I mean? I
Mm-hmm.
want
Yeah,
to be
well,
working on something.
it sounds
Go
like
for it.
demand is there. So our friend Matt would probably say it's time to raise your price, your cost, your what you charge.
I've been doing that slowly, um,
Mm,
Don't
but
feel
it's
bad. Don't,
yeah.
yeah, no,
but it's a little harder, especially with the smaller cards. I never know what to price. Like if it's a big one, I feel comfortable like pricing it like $100, 200, 300. But when it's the little cards, like I don't
yeah,
know what
right,
to do that because everyone's prices and in comparison to their quality is it differs so much from artist to
Yeah.
artist that it
Yeah.
just I want to be respectful to any neighboring artist out there, and it's hard to do that when there doesn't seem to be a consensus of like how much to sell those
Yeah, but
cards.
when you start getting more, that means your neighbor's like, well, damn it, I'm going to start charging what road charges.
Yeah, I could do that.
You get
Yeah,
paid
maybe
them.
as I do it, it will help myself and everyone else out.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
should think of
yeah,
it more that way for
yeah.
sure.
So the
so
last little segment, I'm going to keep us moving, Jake, on the future of comics.
Hmm.
This is just that question where we ask people to kind of think about, where they hope comics could go or where they see comics going towards. What's your vision?
So my vision for comics is that gosh, I already know how it is for everyone else, like outside the United States. But what I would love to happen, specifically for Americans, is that we look to comics again for more of the intellectual
Oh wow!
stimulation. I think
Oh
that
wow!
we are losing a lot of that because we're overworked, we're
Mm,
overtaught, we're it's just too much stuff going on in our lives, right? We're constantly bombarded with media, politics, taking aside, values and what kind of person we are, identity politics, and that's so much that I think that in order to process all of those things easier, it's better to kind of keep your mind active in a non-stressful way. And I feel
yeah.
like comics do that. And what's interesting is you see that happening overseas already. In Japan and in Asia, they're already starting to trade ideas from country to country. It's starting to be more accessible, and everyone, especially the younger generation, is just adapting to it. They're just rolling with it. They're like, yeah, and a lot of people think that our comics and what we make here don't affect what happens in Asia and stuff, but it does. Does. And there, a lot of the times, I think that people need to realize that is that comics have a power, they have a message, and there is, to me, I don't see them as this luxury buy. I feel like they are an essential part of a person's development, and not as like a child, right? Just being a child. I think, as a person, to stay a good person, you need to develop continuously and adapt for the rest of your life. And I feel like comics will help you with that.
So,
I hope that
like,
wasn't too much. I hope that made
Now,
there,
sense.
I will let Jake. I want Jake can respond first, and then
Okay, okay.
I will respond.
yeah, well, they're therapeutic. I mean, that's why I make comics. It's like therapeutic for me. But you're
Mhm.
saying like for the reader too, get in touch with something that you hold in your hand, and it's not a book, and it's not a music. It's a different medium that requires all your senses and concentration. It's not only escapism, but it's also a new way of looking at the world. And it's also still one of the last like cottage industries. I mean, talking as indie creators, we're all either supporting ourselves or planning to support ourselves or supplementing our income, and finding our audience. But we're trying to get away from the gatekeepers and the heavy hand of publishers or commercialism, right? So there's
Mhm.
all those
Yeah.
all those aspects, and it's a real benefit, I think, if people, I think, I mean, if you look at the average, comic nerd, comic person, they're intelligent, they're educated, they're I mean, we're not going to say there aren't like mouth breathers walking around conventions, but you should see what it's like compared to the record shows that I do. So, it's a lot better than that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's really like also kind of like a give and take, right? Once you have an audience and you understand, the do's and don'ts, the creator can adapt, so I mean that was always like the thing with the letters pages back in the old days. They were always giving feedback, and oh, I'd like to see more of this character, or I'd like to see more of that character, or you know so that there's a real give and take to that I don't think you see in books or movies or other media.
Yeah, I think too, especially for all comics, especially in American comics, all of our studios are small. We're one person, two person, three-person studios,
Yeah,
um, and I think that makes us more accessible
Mm,
in to the readers, um,
yeah,
which is scary, but
mm,
probably good at the same time. Like good for the readers, scary for us maybe.
mm.
yeah,
Scary for me mostly because I just don't know if in that interaction I'm helping people. Like at least if I do it indirectly through the comic, um I can just do it without kind of taking the response or witnessing how that happens in real time while they're reading it. But yeah,
Yeah,
I
I actually I made a statement. I think it was on Steve Urena's interview, which was last week. That's what I'm thinking. But I have the same vision, bro, and it's really at the point where I think we have so much space and growth for the as comics, in general, the sequential art form to grow, that I think it's imperative that we do bring an educational mindset to it. Doesn't
yeah,
have to be moral driven or this is right, this is wrong. It's more like I've been tapping into zines. I'm not going too crazy yet, but I would be even if you can help me with this, I would love to try to track down what you think is kind of answering or beginning to answer this. in Japan, like
Yeah.
let's say the zine culture in Japan.
Yeah.
Because I think the bridging the bridging for the art form for me is it's Europe, America, and Asia. Japan is the manga kind of point.
Yeah.
Europeans, they've been, I think, ahead of this way longer than
They're also physically
anybody.
closer to that. So yeah.
What's that again? What was that
They're
again?
also physically closer to each other too. So it's like
Yes,
all
yes, yes, yes.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a great point. But we're always such on this amplified gotta entertain in America. And
Yeah.
as you had said very earlier, one of the things I'm trying to tame in my mind is that little voice that goes, "Oh, that would be cool if I made it." That type of stuff instead of like, "Well, what if I tweaked it a little bit and made it interesting?" Like almost to the point where it's like, what the heck's going on here? Like, I might need to investigate more of this.
Yeah.
That kind of taking you down there. But it's very nice to hear you say, that being a vision. The educational aspect being added.
The
Yeah. I,
educational and the wellness aspect, right? Just like
Yes, yes,
being
yes.
being a well balanced person. You mentioned it kind of quick, but like the politics and the polarization, and you're forced to pick a side. It's really really getting bad. I was in the city
Sad.
yesterday. I was in the city yesterday. They had one of those rallies, and it was like from 50th Street, 50th Street to 14th Street. So it was like
Wow.
crazy.
Jeez.
And
yeah.
yeah,
I couldn't
so
be out there because I just don't do well with heat. But it was crazy how much people were out there this weekend. That was whoa.
yeah, yeah, it was, and they had another one of those last June, so this is not the first one. Anyway,
Yeah.
it's just such a shame to see, like, that how much fighting there is going on and how much propaganda there is going on, and we take some of this and we put it in our storylines and stuff, but um,
Yeah.
it wasn't like this even in our lifetimes. That's the real shame of it. It's like, the people that are really power hungry are really, really trying to exert all their levers of control. So, you know, it, the it really leaves it to independent artists, like, to provide that sanity escape, that people can do. I mean, it's great to see
Yeah.
these conventions being so packed with people who are looking for something interesting in their lives, and that's really hopeful. But the commercialization and the big companies, like the giant mergers. Kurt and I talk about this all the time about Marvel, DC, the big movie studios, the
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
online companies. It's all getting to be like so pervasive and so like invasive. The
Yeah, and then
pride.
they moved the Marvel Animation Studio to Germany.
Really?
Oh wow.
They did.
Oh,
The
Wow.
entire 200,000 employee one. Like I
What?
think they fired most of them,
and
Yeah.
the
where were they
majority of
before?
them.
Where were they before that? In Burbank?
I'm not sure to be honest.
Okay.
I
Yeah, I
It
don't
mean,
know.
makes
I know.
sense. It would make sense
I know whenever you're watching Marvel
in
Animation,
Burbank.
there's like all those names at the end, and it's like thousands of names, and you wonder how many of them are working in the studio and how many people are just working at home and stuff. But
Yeah,
it
I saw
really is.
some YouTube videos recommending that if you do graduate in concept art or animation to move out of the states right now.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I remember. I took a course at School of Visual Arts in the city. I was an adult already, but I was taking continuing ed course in animation, and the instructor said, there was maybe like 11 people in the class. We had finished. We all did a good job, and then he goes, "Oh, by the way, there's a standing offer if anybody wants to go work in Orlando. Disney is hiring interns, and you get room and board, but you work for free, and you learn the craft, and it's all 2D. back then it was all 2D. And
Uh-huh.
that was probably when they were making Lion King or Beauty and the Beast or something like that.
Yeah.
And it was like sight unseen. Like they didn't care, who we were. They just cared that we completed that course, and then they'll take you down and herd you into the cattle call. So I'm sure there's a version of that now, but they're probably a lot more digital. I mean, it's probably
I
all digital.
mean, I bet the digital just allows them to do that more though.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Because
Oh
now,
no.
because now you can really globalize it, right? I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, you see the names.
Or
You see there.
mobile.
It's every country, like all the names. It's like every nationality, every race,
Yeah.
and I guess that's good. There's a lot of it's very labor intensive, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, I was just reviewing some of the Marvel animation to Kurt, and because I had a Disney Plus account. My friend, my one of my daughter's friends left a password when she was over here, so
Yeah.
I just watched Marvel Zombies, and then I had watched all the Marvel What If, and I was also watching some of the Star Wars stuff, which was more 3D animation. But I
Yeah.
thought, like, regardless whether you like the stories or the characters, I thought the quality of the animation has really taken a notch up, and I think
Yeah.
it's probably because there's a lot of automation happening now.
I mean,
So,
they call it, what is it called? Pixel fucked? That's what they call it.
Is that
So that
yeah?
term is for I guess Marvel is notorious for um like after a whole studio completes a scene, the higher ups are like, actually, could you redo it all?
Wow.
Do it in
what?
like a week or two. And
Yeah.
so that's when, and then everybody has to be all hands on deck and no one's sleeping for like a week or two. And they call that
Right.
pixel fucked, I
Wow.
guess.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah. I mean, and I'm wondering because
sorry.
I
Not at
started
all.
my
Not at all. No, no, it's okay. You're safe.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, times are changing. I just hope there's humans in the equation. That's all. I mean, even
Yes. Yes. I mean,
we all have deadlines. We all have overtime. We all have all that. But
and I
as
hope
long
it's not just because I'm an artist, but anything that's not human made, I notice immediately,
Hmm.
and I just don't feel anything. I don't.
Yep.
There's no
Yep.
interest or anything. I just try to skip it as fast
Yeah.
as I can. It's just
right, but
not.
that's a memo that people aren't getting, and that's what I'm really scared about. And because I'm an art teacher for middle school kids, and so I really have to keep my finger on like what's happening in business and everything. And I'm really scared that businesses are moving towards AI and automation, and they don't realize that they're making a really bad mistake. That there's never going to be anything to take away that human touch, but they
Yeah.
don't care. They don't care. They're like, I can have a robot write the script, do the art, do the concepts, do the layout, and do the backgrounds. I mean, maybe the backgrounds, okay. Like I saw that new Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man thing, and the backgrounds are really detailed, and they're obviously just taking real film of real cities and buildings and stuff, and they're just turning it into cartoon, and it looks so much, more polished. But that doesn't mean it's an interesting cartoon. That doesn't mean it's that it's gonna
Yeah,
be
because even if you show them everything that you're doing, I mean, like, even if you put in everybody's work into one, if you feed it everything into the AI, it doesn't mean they'll have the human decisions to
Yeah.
know
Innovation.
what to put together.
It's not even close to being innovative. That's the
No.
biggest issue. Jake, I just forgot. I was supposed to send you a link. Rick Beata. You watch him?
Rick Beata. No.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna send you the link. But if anybody's listening, Rick Beata is a music producer, and he's taking on AI in music specifically, but
Yeah.
from that educational point. Like he's already stated he doesn't care for it at all, but
Yeah.
he's diving in and going in there. He has pie charts of what each of the models are trained on and how they were trained. And all of the models now have admitted they have plateaued. They don't
Yeah.
have any more data. And
Right.
so we have literally reached the end of quote unquote organic data for them to be working. And if you play with these things at all, the biggest frustration comes into the innovative part. You know, it's very hard to describe innovation like as a prompt or some type of mechanizing part of it. But there's a horizon coming. And I've been seeing a lot more people on YouTube that I find to be creditable that have been doing the same as Rick Beata. And I'll put the link to this particular video in the description. But innovation is never, ever going to be replaced. Humans are literally here because of that. If
Yeah.
innovation was something you could, pick up, then everybody else in the animal kingdom would be picking up on it. And then all of a sudden we'd be like, man, these jaguars are getting really good at making manga now. You know what I mean? Like, what the hell? You know what I mean? Like, there's this gorilla troupe that's been really working on some animation over in France. It's not. And I think we just need to constantly put ourselves, especially the artists, and leading by example, the innovation.
I think it also speaks to, you know, we always think that, I'm a comic artist. There's probably not a lot of people that really think about being a comic artist, but then I think there's a lot of people who secretly would love to be an artist.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think that's hard for us to fathom because the comics world is very big but also small, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we're used to being othered in a room, to the point that if people ask what I do and I just met them, I just tell them I'm an artist because I just don't want to go
Yeah.
on a spiel and explain
Yep.
like everything
Yep.
else. Especially when I
I
know they're a normie. I just
Yep.
I want to.
Yep. Yep. I hate explaining how I don't do anything related to Batman, Superman, because that's the first thing they want to talk about is like, oh yeah, I used to collect Superman back in the day. I'm like, I didn't. I have not. So yes,
Well, that's
it's always from
what
the artist.
what both of you guys just described is exactly what Stan Lee used to write about in at parties,
Yeah.
right? He used to,
Yep.
as soon as he would tell them that he was a comic
Yep.
book publisher, so he used to tell them, "Oh, I'm a publisher,"
Right. So the whole indie comic, the indie creator exchange is based on Ro was so gracious to give us volume 1 and 2 of Half the Crown, and of course I was able to drop her a copy of Turbo Pit Fighter down at SPX. Ro, we want to hear what you think about Turbo Pit Fighter and how Jake and I are doing.
So, man,
Be gentle. We can take it. We're adults.
this is just a teaser because
Yeah.
I had so many questions,
That's fine.
and I don't know if just with 12 pages I'm allowed to ask these questions.
No, you
Go
can do
ahead.
it. You can do it.
So one of the questions
Jake loves
is,
answering questions.
yeah. So one of the questions is, well, I guess first a statement. I really think that how the main character grew up is really compelling for me because I think a lot of people don't think about what happens to that kid that kind of goes through something like that. Like,
Yeah.
and this is kind of a glimpse of what could happen.
Oh, you're gonna love the rest of the issue then because it goes back to the flashback of the little girl. Yeah.
Yeah. But I also really like too how she's very like she doesn't plan anything. She's just very okay, whatever I need now, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
She's very
Survival mode.
how do you call? She's still very primal. There you go.
Yeah.
And I think that part is interesting because obviously it seems like the plot that she's involved in is way more complicated than just Primal. And so I think that part's interesting, kind of seeing that character
Mm.
kind of navigate what's happening on a bigger scale. And so that's kind of my takeaway from this comic was just like, well, what happens next? Which I think is a good thing to have, right? You don't want to read something and go like, and then just toss it to the side. But I
Yep.
definitely have so many questions still. Um, and when does this come out then? The whole thing? Can you tell me that at least?
So the next 6 pages are going to be in an anthology that's coming out by at least January 1st.
Okay.
But that's going to be with some other stuff that we're commissioning with Ken Landgraf and some other collaborators. We're thinking that maybe the
It's an
following.
anthology. It's an anthology called Doom Mags, End of the World
Well,
anthology. So
it's yeah, Doom Magazine #1,
yeah.
but it's possible. I don't know if Kurt's on board with this, but it's possible that the following January 1st we have Turbo Pit Fighter #1 completed,
Oh, I
which
think
is
earlier, Jake. We've talked
you
about this.
do
Yes, I do.
okay.
I do. I think you
Uh,
underestimate. I think you underestimate our momentum. As slow as it is, because Jake and I, just to remind you, Ro, we only get together every Sunday and do this.
Oh,
So
whoa.
we
Okay.
don't, we do very little, if any, work outside of it. Basically, because, and it's kind of unspoken between Jake and I, is that you don't want to get ahead of the other guy. You know what I mean? Like it's so
Oh,
he's on one side of the camera doing the
okay.
writing and the penciling, and I'm on the other side running the podcast and inking. And then
Yeah.
we're sort of like just it, and it's all based on hanging out at Jake's house.
So
So we're talking comics.
I have a question about the inking, actually.
Yeah, that's
So
me.
this is, did you subdue the darks a little bit to make it look more newspapery in
Uh,
the print?
yes.
Or,
Well, there's actually a screen, a newsprint. I scanned a piece of newsprint and
uh-huh.
reduced it by 10% opacity, and then screened it over the top. But if you look in,
Oh,
my faux zipatone though is water soluble graphite. I use liquid masking to hold all
okay.
my whites. The black lines are already there. It's the skeletal structure, the inking. And then there's a lot of texturing and tonality that I then build from there with color
Yeah.
pencils and spray paint and just to
just swapping around.
realize it a little bit more.
So the final product has pencil in it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's all.
Oh,
It's we're 95 plus traditional across the board. Even our hand. We're hand. This is my hand lettering that you see as well. So, and we're actually working on. Jake's been working on that throughout the interview. From this morning, we're hand lettering a 6 pager that Ken Landgraf did
so I really
for
like
us.
I'm really big on how the sound effects look. I get kind of picky with it. So if they
Yes.
look too
Yes.
bubbly or round, I kind of get turned off because I feel like I'm
Yeah.
being patronized. But I really like how you guys really kept it kind of edgy and just um they like the font is different depending on what the action is happening.
Yes.
Again, like if it's too uniform and it looks the same, I
Yeah.
I feel like I'm
Kurt,
five and then I start to get
Kurt,
angry.
you have
Yeah.
to
So
Kurt, you have to
that didn't happen.
isolate that comment because that's exactly what we're going for. And like one of the first people to notice that is that I
Yeah.
mean, I used to be like a graffiti kid back in the day, but now it's like
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
yeah, but now I'm like, I really have an eye for typography. Not like in my classroom, I do a lot of different lettering styles with kids. Like we learn serif letters and bubble letters and 3D letters and calligraphy and all that. So I am kind of like really into lettering, but when it comes to a sound effect, it's not just letters, it's also like a feeling of impact or onomatopoeia, or it could be a
Yeah.
splash or it could be a crunch,
Yeah.
or so you want and so I think that's called like expressive letters, right, when the letters take on a shape and So, and Kurt is really great for that because he calls it like distressing things, but he's really like sloshing around and slopping around and making it look junky and splattery and all that stuff, but
Yeah.
not too much. Like I think Bill Sienkiewicz is maybe like too much, but just kind of like dirty it up like maybe like 15-20% or something.
Well, it
Which,
is the
which
post-apocalypse. It is the post-apocalypse.
right,
There's nothing
but
clean about that.
yeah, but we were just having a discussion before about lettering and like that like most comic people they just type out a font and and thank God that they can do that because you can produce your own comics pretty quickly and easily. Um, but we take like the extra double triple time to hand do it, and hopefully that yeah, I mean it's kind of like a subtle thing, and 9 out of 10 people would not notice it consciously, but you do notice it subconsciously. So it all just
So
kind
do
of
you? I assume some of these speech bubbles then you guys had to make on a separate piece of paper and paste it on here then?
Yes.
Okay.
yes. In
Or
the
not.
first
We can do it in Photoshop. We can take the scan and then bring that layer into Photoshop.
Nice.
right that because in the old days like we used to have like a laser printer and then we would print it out on sticky paper, cut it out with a little scissor or an X-Acto, and then just
Yeah.
paste it down. But then, you realize years later that'll turn yellow at a different rate of the regular paper. So you have like,
That's
and
true.
and the glue will turn into some kind of like moss or something. So you have to think like 30 years ahead also at the same time. But yeah, well, I mean, we were just discussing that about how we're going to be making a font because our lettering, it just takes too long.
It's
It takes us,
complicated.
I
yeah.
mean, it's the lettering is so nice.
It's nice to hear that that you notice that
I
maybe
so I'm really dyslexic actually, and
uh
the good thing about comics, it's easy for me to read because each section of words is like
Yep.
has its own section and its own speech bubble.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
it's like where they say that people who send walls of text within one message are kind of psychotic. They should break it up like a
Oh
comic.
gosh.
They say that. I don't know if
Yes.
that's true or whatever,
Yes.
but it's kind of what came to mind. Um, but again, that's another one of my reasons why I prefer reading comics. This was an easy read, as in like I didn't get confused as to which speech bubble was the next one. I find, especially in American comics, sometimes I have that issue. But interestingly, I feel like indie comic artists kind of have that down more than the bigger published artists. I don't know why that is.
they probably have 10 different people working on a page.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Oh,
there's a
okay.
disconnect. Yeah. Yeah, there's
All
a
right then.
disconnect.
Yeah, that would explain it.
That's what I would say. I would suggest. Yeah.
Right, right.
Yeah,
Yeah, another thing is that we like some comic art is some of the most beautiful art I think in all of the pantheon of art. Like for me, like somebody like Frank Frazetta or like to me it's like some of the best art ever made. So it kills me sometimes when you're seeing like some of this art, and sometimes it's like fully painted, right? Like Alex Roth or Richard Corbin or whatever, and then they just take a black and white word bubble and slap it on top of all this beautiful color and all this beautiful interplay. And I wonder, like, why don't they like gray tone it down or colorize it or make it part of the page? And
yeah,
so many people just don't do that because, like, it was, I guess it's not a tradition, but that's one thing we started to do is like, like maybe gray it, knock it down a little bit, so it's not like sharp, black and white, high contrast in your face, and it just kind of like melts a little bit into the background.
dude. If I start doing that, I'm gonna cite you guys. I'm gonna be like, oh, it's because of these guys. These they said something, and I was like, oh, that's a good idea.
Well,
See,
experiment
I'll take it.
because
I'll take that,
yeah,
sir.
experiment because it's it there is like sometimes like a color scheme on a page, right?
Yeah.
And black and white is just so like high contrast, no matter what. And the probably the thing I hate the worst out of anything is when people just buy that. I don't know if it's an app or a program or something, and it has these big sound effect letters that are just the same as Marvel used to use like 20 years ago. And
Yeah.
they're like see through, and you it's just like, oh, they bought that app or they bought that font or whatever.
I
It's
didn't know there was something like that. I always
Mm,
hand letter my sound effects. I feel like it's never
yeah,
gonna look good
good
if I
for
don't.
you. Good for you.
yeah. I think it's good. It's also all about leading the eye, right? You want the person to go from here to here to here, and sound effects are a really good way to do it.
I
But
noticed you guys do something similar to what I do with my sound effects too. Is you never use an action like a verb as a sound effect, so there's no like punch or jump.
right, yeah,
And I appreciate that.
Hmm.
I like that.
yeah. I mean, it's kind of out there. I think was it like Daniel Warren Johnson or something that we noticed he was doing that. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, it kind of takes you behind the curtain when you do that. Like I would think like Crumb used to do that sometimes. Like slap or something, or but not all the time. I mean, if you're trying to be cheeky, that's okay. But if you're trying to be serious, I mean, we're very serious science fiction, stuff. We, we, yeah.
Whew.
Yeah, I think we all
All
have like
right. Well,
pet peeves. So.
What's that? What was that last
Oh, I
comment?
just said we all have our pet peeves. I think as creators.
Oh
yeah,
man, that's all.
yeah,
That's all we
definitely.
go back and forth
That's a
about
whole
here.
nother. Yep. Yep.
That's
Yep.
that's
Yep.
all
Yep.
we do here. Yeah.
Well, we don't want to take any more of Rose's time. She has spent all this wonderful time on a Sunday with us and can't thank her enough. Ro, we always give the last couple minutes if you need them. Just go ahead and tell everybody, where you're at, where you're going to be, how to find you, how to get your books, where to read them.
All right. So this is Rohigashi, and my next event, if you're in Austin, I'm going to. I do sponsor a Filipino cryptid room at Filipino Day Market at Austin Beer Works in Sprinkle Valley, and I've decided to have my books there too this year. I've been too shy
Nice.
to do that in previous years, and then after that, I will be in San Antonio for Comics Arts San Antonio on November 15th. And then after that, I will be at Anime Frontier in Dallas.
All right, and if you're watching this many
All
years into
right.
the future, those dates are 2025.
Yes, yes. Thank you so
Great,
much.
great. And on what's your Instagram?
My Instagram is my name, Rohigashi. So it's RO and then period HIGASHI.
Great. And we're definitely gonna follow you ourselves, and hopefully a lot of viewers will check you out on Instagram as well.
Thank you so much.
So yeah, thanks for taking the time to come and share some time with us. And I think this is pretty educational. So hopefully people can get a lot of process oriented learning out of this. Folks, you can check out our other channels. We have the flip throughs that we do. It's called Comics That Influence on our YouTube landing page. And our mainstay is Making Turbo Pit Fighter. We're live every Sunday around 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Feel free to join us, and you could even leave comments now. So every Sunday, me and Kurt in split screen making Turbo Pit Fighter. But that's all I got. Kurt, anything else?
Ro, just hold tight. We're going to do a quick after show. Let your audio and video load up. But can't thank you enough, and looking forward to seeing you IC3 next year, 2026.
Yeah.
So
If
that would
only
be
they'll
that.
announce it. They
We'll
need to
review
announce
it. Yeah,
it.
he's killing us. He's killing us. Rumor has it they're making a decision on venue and place. So
Yeah.
I think it's all been done. They just got to tighten up some things. But other than that, thank you very much, everybody, and we'll see you next Sunday, Jake.
See you, Kurt. Bye, Ro. Thanks.